What if I told you that one of the most profound religious schisms in global history didn't actually start with a formal theological debate?
Right, which is, what most people would expect.
Exactly. I mean, it actually resembled a sudden boardroom coup playing out down the hall while the designated heir was literally busy planning the founder's funeral.
Yeah, it completely shatters the illusion we have about how history is made.
It really does. Because we look back at a schism that shapes the lives of over 1 billion people today, and we just assume, well, it must have been a clean break over a single point of doctrine.
But when you actually examine the earliest records, you find this really chaotic intersection. It's personal relationships, tribal survival instincts, and deeply held religious convictions just clashing all at once.
And that messy intersection is exactly what we are exploring in this custom-tailored deep dive crafted specifically for you. Welcome. I'm your host.
And I'm your resident expert.
So today, our mission is to investigate the origins of the Sunni-Shia split in Islam. And our map for this journey relies on excerpts from a deeply detailed historical text by S.H.M. Jaffrey, a comprehensive Wikipedia overview on the origin of Shia Islam, and, the broader consensus of Western scholarship.
Which is important because Western scholars have, historically, had a bit of a habit of reducing this entire split to a purely political dispute over succession.
Right, like a secular fight for a throne.
Exactly. But the sources we are working with today really challenge that reduction. They reveal a story where politics and theology are just entirely inseparable.
Yeah, where pre-Islamic cultural values collided with a radical new religious framework. But before we jump in, I want to make our goal for you, the listener, completely clear.
Oh, absolutely.
Our mission is to impartially explore the historical accounts and the theological arguments exactly as they are presented in the source texts.
Right. We are not here to endorse or take sides between Sunni and Shia viewpoints.
Not at all. We are simply unpacking the history, the mechanics of power, and the evolution of ideas as they're documented in this material. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
To understand the dispute over who should succeed the Prophet Muhammad, we really cannot start at the moment of his death. We have to rewind.
Yeah, you have to look at the cultural soil of pre-Islamic Arabia.
Right, specifically regarding leadership and bloodlines. Because the Arabian Peninsula was definitely not a blank slate waiting to be written on.
No, not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to grasp the pre-Islamic Arab concept of hasab.
Hasab, which translates roughly to ancestral nobility.
Right. Think about it. In a desert environment, without a centralized state, without courts or a police force, a tribe's survival depended entirely on its reputation and alliances.
Wow. Okay, so Hasab was like the currency of that reputation.
Exactly. A tribe's glory wasn't just measured by its current wealth. It was this living ledger of noble deeds, courage, and generosity that was passed down through generations.
I always look at Hasab like an inherited trust fund of glory.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because you couldn't just go out and earn it all by yourself in one lifetime, no matter how brave or smart you were.
Right. Yeah. You had to be born into a family that had spent generations building up its moral and heroic capital.
And crucially, a family that hadn't squandered that capital through, cowardice or betrayal. It was a deeply entrenched aristocracy of merit over time.
And that inherited trust fund dictated all the social hierarchies. But the mechanics of how that actually translated into leadership, well, that varied by region.
Right, because the North and South were very different.
Yeah, in Northern Arabia, the tribes were highly pragmatic. Their religious sentiment was pretty lukewarm, historically speaking.
So they just wanted the most capable elder at the helm, regardless of any divine mandate.
Exactly. They favored electing leaders based on age, seniority, and proven battlefield or diplomatic ability.
But the Southern Arabs had a completely different operating system, didn't they?
They really did. Tribes like the Aus and the Khazraj, who were settled in the city of Medina, came from a much older, more settled agricultural civilization down in Yemen.
And they were much more accustomed to hereditary succession.
Right. They were familiar with priest kings, rulers whose authority wasn't just practical, but was based on religious sanctity and a direct divine connection.
So, sitting right at the intersection of these two conflicting cultural expectations was the Banu Hashim.
Yes. The specific clan of the Prophet Muhammad.
Because long before Islam even arrived, the Banu Hashim were the hereditary guardians of the Kaaba in Mecca, which was the holiest sanctuary in the region.
And they held the honorific duties of providing food and water to the pilgrims. This endowed them with a really long-standing sacerdotal or, priestly lineage.
So they commanded this immense psychological respect that transcended ordinary tribal politics.
Precisely. So when Muhammad emerges with the message of Islam, he isn't just a visionary speaking out of nowhere.
He's the latest figurehead of this deeply revered lineage.
Right. We have a culture already wired to respect noble bloodlines, and then we introduce Muhammad's own actions and the text of the Quran itself.
Which seemed to uniquely elevate his specific family, right?
Yeah, the linguistic focus in the Quran regarding prophetic families is just impossible to ignore. The text frequently emphasizes that God's favor remains within the families of prophets.
Right. It uses some very specific terms for that.
It does. It uses Turiya for offspring, Al for family, Al for the people of the house.
And Korba for near relatives, I think.
Exactly. There are actually over 100 verses mentioning the special favor granted to the progeny of past prophets, like Abraham and Moses.
Wow. Over 100, yeah.
So for a society already steeped in the concept of hasab, this continuous Quranic emphasis on prophetic lineage carried profound weight.
And this sets the stage perfectly for Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because, Ali's resume reads like the ultimate culmination of all these ideals.
It really does. He is Muhammad's cousin, belonging to the Banu Hashim.
He was the very first male convert to Islam, accepting the message at just 13 years old.
And he was adopted by Muhammad as a brother in faith. Not to mention, he married Muhammad's daughter, Fatima.
Right, becoming the father of Muhammad's beloved grandsons, Hassan and Hussein. But it wasn't just his lineage, was it?
No, the sources detail specific moments where Muhammad explicitly elevated Ali, like during the military expedition to Tabuk.
Oh yeah, where Muhammad left Ali in charge of Medina, which was a massive responsibility.
And he told Ali, "You are to me what Aaron was to Moses, except there will be no prophet after me."
Wow. Drawing a direct parallel to the ultimate prophetic support system.
Exactly. But the most heavily debated event happens at a place called Ghadir Khumm.
Right, so Muhammad is returning from his final pilgrimage. He gathers the masses, takes Ali by the hand, and makes a huge declaration.
He says, "He of whom I am the Mawla, of him Ali is also the Mawla."
And this is where things get complicated.
Very. The entire trajectory of Islamic history hinges on the linguistic ambiguity of that single word Mawla.
Because in Arabic, it's highly polysemous,
Yeah.
right? It means multiple things.
Yes. Shias interpret Mawla as master, leader, or designated successor.
While Sunnis interpret it as friend, confidant, or someone held in deep affection and loyalty.
Right, and the theological implications here are massive. It's not just about who gets to be in charge of the treasury.
It's about how the community is guided after the prophet is gone.
Exactly. The mechanism of leadership fundamentally changes depending on how you read that event. For the Shia, the difference between a prophet, a nabi, and an imam is defined right here.
Because legislation and new revelation end with Muhammad.
Right, the Quran is complete. But divine guidance, the esoteric interpretation of the law, and the infallible protection of the community's spiritual health, all of that must continue through the imams, starting with Ali.
It becomes this unbroken chain of spiritual authority.
Yes.
But I have to push back on this narrative, though.
Sure, go for it.
Let's assume Muhammad's declaration at Ghadir Khumm was meant to be a clear, unambiguous appointment. If Ali's qualifications were so universally recognized, both culturally and theologically, why didn't the entire community just naturally rally behind Ali the moment the prophet died?
That discrepancy between religious ideals and historical reality brings us straight to the chaos of Muhammad's death.
It was a complete shock to the system.
Right. The moment the prophet passes away, the community faces an existential crisis. The religious canopy that held these rival factions together is suddenly gone.
And gritty, pragmatic politics instantly take over. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does.
Because what happens next is known as the gathering at the Saki, the assembly hall of the Banu Sayyida clan.
Yeah, and looking at the accounts, the Saqifa plays out exactly like that opportunistic boardroom coup you mentioned earlier.
Right. While Ali and the prophet's immediate family are in the house, focused on washing and preparing Muhammad's body for burial, the politics of survival are happening down the street.
And the group gathering at the Saqifa were the Ansar. Those were the indigenous Midanese helpers who had originally invited Muhammad to their city.
And we really have to understand their fear here.
Oh, absolutely. They had spent years fighting defensive wars against the Meccans to protect Muhammad. Now that he was dead, they were terrified.
Terrified that the Meccan immigrants, the Muhajirun, would leverage their status as early converts to dominate Medina.
Right, so the Ansar wanted to elect a leader from among themselves immediately, just to secure their own political survival.
But the Meccans get wind of this secret meeting. Abu Bakr and Umar ibn al-Khattab, two of Muhammad's most prominent senior companions, they just rush to the Saqifa to intercept the Ansar.
And what follows is a fiery, intense debate. It's driven by old tribal rivalries and the very real threat of violence breaking out in the streets.
But Abu Bakr and Umar, they were masterful politicians in this moment.
They were. They recognized that the Ansar were internally divided by an ancient, bitter rivalry between the Aus and the Khazraj tribes.
So they used that. The Meccans argued that the broader Arab tribes would never accept the leadership of anyone outside of the Quraysh, which was Muhammad's wider tribe.
And through sheer force of argument, leveraging those internal Medinese divisions, Abu Bakr was acclaimed as the first caliph.
It was wild. Umar later described the event as a falta, a hasty, unpremeditated affair that only avoided disaster because God averted the evil of dissension.
Yeah. But notice who is completely absent from this entire process.
Ali, he and the Prophet's family are entirely bypassed.
Exactly. But when Ali finds out, he doesn't launch an armed rebellion.
No, he engages in a deeply principled, passive resistance. For 6 whole months, he utterly refuses to pledge allegiance or pay homage to Abu Bakr.
And during those 6 months of tension, the new administration makes a move that effectively neutralizes the Prophet's family politically and economically.
Right. Abu Bakr denies Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, her inheritance of the rich agricultural estate of Fadak.
He cites a tradition that prophets do not leave material inheritances, and that their property basically becomes public charity.
Which is huge, because whether it was motivated by sincere statecraft or political strategy, the mechanism of that decision is undeniable.
Right. Without the massive revenue from Fadak, organizing any sustained political opposition becomes vastly more difficult for Ali and his supporters.
You simply cannot fund a political movement without resources.
You can't. And we hear the psychological toll of this systemic exclusion in a famous speech Ali delivered much later, known as the Ash Shakashika.
It's a powerful speech. He describes the bitter agony of watching his rightful heritage be plundered.
He uses this really vivid imagery, stating he had a mote rankling in his eye and a bone sticking in his throat.
Wow. But he consciously chose patience over violence.
He did. He endured the humiliation because launching a civil war at that vulnerable moment would have destroyed infant Islam entirely.
So Ali waits out Abu Bakr's short rule and then waits out the 10-year rule of the second caliph, Umar. But when Umar is on his deathbed after being stabbed, Ali's patience is tested yet again.
Yeah, because Umar sets up a structure to choose his successor. And the mechanics of this system seem explicitly designed to lock Ali out once more.
Right. Umar created a shura, basically an electoral committee of 6 prominent men to choose the third caliph.
But he engineered the rules masterfully. He stipulated that if the committee was tied 3-3, the deciding vote would belong to a man named Abd ar-Rahman bi Auf.
And Abd ar-Rahman bi Auf just happens to be the brother-in-law of Uthman, another leading candidate and a member of the powerful Umayyad clan.
The deck is visibly stacked.
It really is. So Abd ar-Rahman approaches Ali with a pivotal offer.
He promises Ali the caliphate, but he binds it with 3 strict conditions. Ali must agree to rule by the Quran, by the Sunnah, which refers to the traditions of the Prophet, and crucially by the precedents established by the first 2 caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar.
So Ali accepts the first 2 conditions without hesitation. But he completely rejects the third.
Yes. He tells Abd ar-Rahman that where there is no clear law from the Quran or the Prophet, he will relent solely on his own independent judgment.
He just flat out refuses to be legally or morally bound by the administrative decisions of Abu Bakr and Umar.
And Uthman, conversely, readily accepts all 3 conditions and is named the third caliph.
Which is crazy to think about.
This raises an important question, though. Why would Ali throw away the leadership of the entire empire over a seemingly minor administrative concession?
Right, it seems like terrible politics.
Because this refusal is actually the theoretical cornerstone for the entire later development of independent Shia legal theory.
Okay, wait. Explain how that works in practice. How does his refusal shape the law?
Well, Sunni legal and political theory eventually comes to rely heavily on the concept of ijma, or the consensus of the community, and the righteous precedent of the Prophet's companions.
Okay.
By flatly refusing to validate the decisions of Abu Bakr and Umar, Ali is asserting a radically different mechanism for truth.
He's saying that human consensus is fallible.
Exactly. He is stating that previous political administrations are fallible. True guidance can only come from the Prophet's explicit word, the Quran, or the divinely guided intellect of the Imam interpreting from first principles.
It's an astounding moment of personal integrity. I mean, it was disastrous politics in the short term. He literally talked himself out of the highest office in the world, but he refused to compromise his theological principles for power.
And the consequences of Uthman taking that power were immediate and deeply destabilizing.
Because Uthman heavily favored his own clansmen, the Umayyads, right?
Right, and this was highly controversial because many of the Umayyad elite had been the fiercest, wealthiest enemies of Islam in its earliest days.
They only converted when Mecca was finally conquered.
Exactly. Yet Uthman handed them lucrative governorships and vast estates across the expanding empire.
This triggers massive, unprecedented wealth disparity. The old egalitarian ideals of early Islam, where the treasury was distributed fairly, just start evaporating.
And this economic stratification triggers a fierce backlash from the pious ascetic classes.
We see the rise of the Qurra, the devoted Quran readers.
Yes, and uncompromising companions like Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar stood in the Mosque of Medina, thundering against this hoarding of wealth, demanding socioeconomic justice.
And the state's response was harsh, wasn't it?
Very. Abu Dhar was beaten and exiled to the desert, where he eventually died alone.
I mean, exiling beloved, pious companions is like pouring gasoline on a fire. These socioeconomic grievances detonate into outright rebellion. Mobs from the provinces march on Medina, surround Uthman's home, and assassinate him.
The empire is thrown into absolute chaos.
So with Uthman dead, the desperate masses finally turn to Ali and acclaim him as the fourth caliph. But the state he inherits is practically ungovernable.
The social contract is completely shattered.
So Ali makes a profound strategic move. He relocates his capital out of Medina to Kufa, a garrison city in Iraq.
And we really need to pause and look at Kufa, because it becomes the beating heart of the Shia movement.
Kufa was definitely not a traditional, cohesive Arab city.
No, it was highly heterogeneous, full of rival Arab tribes, and more importantly, it had a massive population of non-Arabs.
The Mawali, yeah.
Yes, the Mawali. Kufa was home to thousands of Persian clients, including roughly 4,000 Dalamite soldiers.
And these were Persians who had embraced Islam and fought for the empire, but were treated as second-class citizens by the Arab aristocracy.
Right, they were often denied equal stipends from the treasury. But when Ali took power, he implemented a strict egalitarianism.
He distributed the treasury equally, refusing to favor Arab elites over non-Arab converts.
And here we see the mechanism of how a religious movement really grows. Ali's unwavering justice appeals directly to these marginalized demographics.
So the Shia movement begins to draw immense strength from populations seeking relief from an oppressive social hierarchy.
Exactly. Kufa becomes a stronghold precisely because Ali treats the Mawali as equals.
But of course, that same uncompromising integrity guarantees civil war.
It does. The Arab elites whose stipends were cut instantly rebelled. Ali faced the Battle of the Camel against the Prophet's widow Aisha, Talha, and Zubair.
Who basically used vengeance for Uthman's death as a political pretext.
Right. And immediately after, he fought the agonizing, drawn-out Battle of Siffin against Muawiyah, the powerful Umayyad governor of Syria who refused to step down.
It's just endless conflict. And Ali is ultimately assassinated by a fanatic while praying in Kufa. Muawiyah seizes total control, establishing the Umayyad dynasty.
The political power of the Prophet's family seems definitively broken at this point.
But the story shifts to Ali's son, Hussein, and it takes a profoundly tragic turn.
Right. Decades pass, Muawiyah dies and passes the throne to his son, Yazid.
And Yazid is widely viewed by the pious as corrupt, worldly, and entirely unfit for spiritual leadership.
Yet he demands Hussein pledge allegiance to legitimize this new dynastic kingship.
And Hussein refuses.
He does. Hussein receives thousands of letters from the people of Kufa begging him to come lead them in a rebellion against Yazid.
So, Hussein marches toward Kufa with a small band of family members and devoted followers.
But before he even gets close, the Kufan uprising is brutally suppressed by Yazid's governor through bribes and executions.
Hussein is intercepted at Karbala by a massive Umayyad army. He is entirely abandoned by the people who called for him.
And the Umayyad commander demands Hussein's surrender and an oath of allegiance to Yazid. Hussein refuses.
The sources make a pretty compelling argument here, right? That Hussein knew Kufa had fallen.
Yes. This wasn't just a political coup that went wrong due to bad intelligence. It was a calculated, deliberate embrace of martyrdom.
We have to look at the mechanism of that martyrdom. Why embrace certain death?
Well, think about it. If Hussein signs a treaty and pledges allegiance to Yazid, the ideal of the Prophet's family gets absorbed into the Umayyad state apparatus.
It becomes compromised.
Exactly. By choosing to die, Hussein uses his own blood as permanent, unerasable ink on the historical record.
The political compromise can be forgotten or rewritten, but a massacre cannot be ignored. It basically guarantees the movement will never be fully absorbed by the establishment.
And Karbala acts as the ultimate crucible. The Umayyad army slaughters Hussein and his small band of 72 followers.
And they take the women and children of the Prophet's family captive, marching them in chains to Damascus.
By forcing the community to witness the brutal massacre of the Prophet's own grandson, Hussein drew an undeniable eternal line in the sand between true Islamic norms and corrupt worldly kingship.
The tragedy of Karbala completely transforms the identity of the movement.
It finalizes the Shia identity. It shifts the movement from being a political faction arguing over Ali's administrative rights into a deeply spiritual, almost esoteric framework.
Centered on suffering, systemic injustice, and the necessity of divine guidance from the imams in a dark, tyrannical world.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? We started out looking for the origin of a political split, but we found a vastly more complex reality.
Yeah, the origins of Shi'ism aren't just an argument over a throne.
They're woven from the pre-Islamic reverence for noble bloodlines, meeting the Qur'an's clear elevation of Muhammad's family. You have the gritty boardroom politics of the Saqifa colliding with Ali's uncompromising legal and moral integrity at the Shura.
And you have the explosive socioeconomic grievances of Kufa culminating in the ultimate transformative sacrifice of Hussein at Karbala.
It serves as a profound reminder that human events, especially those that ripple across millennia, are rarely ever just one thing.
They are inseparable combinations of economic disparity, tribal momentum, personal integrity, and deep spiritual longing.
You really cannot cleanly separate the muddy runoff from the melting snow once it's in the river.
That's a great way to look at it.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. A historical what-if based on the mechanisms of power we unpack today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think back to the Shura, when Abd ar-Rahman offered the caliphate to Ali, provided Ali agreed to follow the precedents of Abu Bakr and Umar.
Right, the crucial third condition.
If Ali had simply swallowed his pride, if he had played the pragmatic politician and accepted that third condition just to get his hands on the levers of power, he would have become the third caliph without a drop of bloodshed.
It is arguably the most consequential pivot point in the history of the empire.
Exactly. If he had taken that deal, would his undeniable charisma and authority have kept a united Islamic empire together?
Or, given the explosive structural friction between the wealthy Umayyad elite and marginalized groups like the Mawali and the ascetics, was a violent collision entirely inevitable no matter who sat on the throne?
Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.